What's up, everybody? Justin Van Zuden here. That's STL Cardinals 84 in the daily fantasy streets, here to show you a little tips, some tips and tricks on our golf lineup HQ tool to help you dominate the competition. Again, you can get access to all this if you are a RotoGrinders premium subscriber. So if you're not a subscriber right now, hopefully we can show you some stuff that can give you a little leg up in the golf daily fantasy world. I've been using our golf lineup HQ tool here for about 10 years now, and it just keeps on improving. So I'm going to take you through some of the items that you can look for if you are using our lineup HQ tool to build lineups on a given week. So I am taping this the week of the Open Championship, so we've got a major tournament on tap, and I have narrowed down the player pool just a little bit here before I started taping the video. So you can see right now I've got 92 golfers in my player pool, and I've excluded 67. That is what these filters up here mean. Basically, I just excluded all the golfers that simply aren't viable at all. A lot of the lower salary golfers. But if you're brand new to utilizing the lineup HQ tool, this is the main screen that basically gives you all the information at a glance. And you can simply exclude a player from your player pool by hitting this exclude button over here, denoted by a little silver X. So, for example, if I don't want Lucas Glover in my player pool, just hit that X, and now I have one additional player excluded from my player pool. So just for the sake of making this a little bit easier to comprehend and understand, I am going to just exclude a bunch of players from my pool here now, just to get this down. Usually on a given week in golf, I run somewhere between 20 and 25 players in my player pool. So we definitely don't want to have 70 or 80 golfers in our player pool. Even if you're building a bunch of lineups, that tends to dilute them a little bit too much. So I'm kind of just randomly clicking this, since we're not taping this video as like an actual analysis video. I just want to get this player pool down to about 40 for the sake of making it easier for us to build our lineups in this sample tutorial. So, okay, I've got my player pool down to 40. Again, don't pay any attention to the names or who they are, and that's not the purpose of this video. So I've got my player pool down to 40 golfers. If I want to search for a particular player to make sure I have them in my player pool, for example, Corey Connors, I can just start typing his name into this little search box, and then he pops up. If for some reason you can't find somebody that you're looking for, you can also toggle to the excluded players and search in there. If you want to add somebody back after you've excluded them on accident, you can click this little plus button here, and that will simply add them back. So if I want to add, let's say, Alexander Bjork back into my player pool, just hit the plus, and then he goes back to the active player pool. All the information in the table here is summaries of our projections data. So going along the top here, we have salary, we have actual exposure, which after you build lineups, that will populate with numbers. We have fantasy points, so you can sort by our fantasy point projections. Scotty Scheffler, as he is most weeks, has the highest projection. You can sort by projected ownership. You can sort by floor, ceiling, optimal lineup percentage, point per dollar rating. If you sort by point per dollar, it's always going to give you cheaper golfers based on the way that golf scoring works. You can sort by our expert consensus value rankings. Notorious does a model every week, so you can sort by his ratings if you trust his data. You can sort by our internal projections, cut probability, win probability, top 5 probability, and on to help you curate what you want for a player pool. And so if I am saying for this week that I want to make sure I am underweight on Scotty Scheffler, I don't like him for whatever reason, I'm going to set my minimum on him, say at 10, and my maximum at 15. And then Lineup HQ will do its best when it's building my lineups to keep Scheffler within a 10 to 15% ownership within my lineups. And let's say I really like Colin Morikawa, and I want to get, say, at least 50% of him and a maximum of 60. These min-max tools are the most common tools that I use when I am building my player pool, so that I can give Lineup HQ inputs into players that I want to have more projected ownership than the field in my lineups, or less projected ownership than the field in my lineups. So if I want to filter by what certain RotoGrinders experts think, I can click on their names. So if I click on mine, These are my picks for the week, my conviction picks. I can click on Justin Bailey's, who are denoted by, you see the little green circle around his name here. The green dots are his. The yellow dots are Hondizzle's. The orange dots are mine. And then Notorious has 2 filters of his own. So you can see who we like at a glance on any given week. And that's basically how you handle the summary screen. Normally, I would go in and put mins and maxes for all of my golfers that are going to be in my player pool. But just for purposes of this exercise, I only want to do 2 of them. And you could really do a whole lot of not much else with Lineup HQ and still get some decent lineups out of that build if you just curate the player pool and go from there. And so you could stop there and build lineups right now. I'm going to take you further through the tool, but this in and of itself is a great starting point to utilizing Lineup HQ to finalize your lineups for a given week of golf. So that's the player pool tab. The next tab is the build rules tab. And this, again, allows you to have more customization ability before you build your lineups. If you really want to trust the projections, you can leave this range of outcomes at 0. If you think this is a slider here, so if you think, hey, there's a lot of variance in golf, I'm going to take this range of outcomes up to 50, then it'll put it in the middle. We can pull it over any way we want. So I usually leave that somewhere in the middle, but if you want to totally go with the projections, set it down here. Number of unique players is the number of unique players within each specific lineup. If you set this to 2, then each lineup that you make is going to have at least 2 golfers different than every other lineup. You're not going to be able to set it to 6 and still build, or 5 and still get it to build 50 or 60 lineups because you don't have that many golfers in your player pool. I usually set this to 2. Your max exposure, if you don't want to go all in on any given golfer, say we'll set our max exposure to 70. That's not going to give you more than 70% of any individual golfer. And then you can set your min and max salaries. I sometimes like to leave money on the table because the data shows that most people use up all their salary cap. So let's say we set the max salary to $49,800 instead of $50,000. We'll set the minimum to $49,200. You're not going to get any lineups that utilize the full salary cap if you change this setting to less than $50,000, which helps if you're building GPP lineups to differentiate your builds. Ownership settings. I usually don't mess with the minimum total lineup ownership percentage, but the maximum total lineup ownership percentage, I do like to set a cap on this, usually somewhere around 90 or 100. And that way the global ownership of all the golfers in any given lineup won't be over 100%. And that will serve to help your lineup from having risk of significant duplication in the large GPPs. If you're going for $1 million top prize or $100,000 top prize, you don't want to have all the chalk in any specific lineup. That's one way to help accommodate that. It defaults to checking using the min-max exposures. I always leave that checked because I do utilize them. This toggle here, prioritize lineups over max exposures. This helps relax your setting a little bit. If you start to get too granular, you could get errors in Lineup HQ when you build lineups if you set a very specific minimum and maximum. So I believe it was Morikawa that I set a minimum of 50, a maximum of 60. It might give me 48 or it might give me 62. I'm okay with that if it's just a little bit off. Prioritizing lineup builds over max exposures helps to give you lineups as opposed to errors if you start to get a little bit too granular with your inputs into the tool. Using running exposure percentages when building, again, will keep utilizing that min-max with each lineup it generates as opposed to just doing it overall. I usually leave that unchecked. So that's the build settings. You can also add some custom rules if you're, setting your own projections or something like that. But this is usually a custom setting that's better utilized for other sports since golf doesn't have specific positions that we have to worry about. I usually don't mess with the custom rules setting for Lineup HQ. The build settings is the main thing that you want to focus on. Third, we have the groups tab. If you want to set up a player group, you can actually do it here by clicking new group. And this will give me group A and I can rename it. So I'm just going to name it for purposes of this test group. Save. So you can see I've set up a new test group. Now you can type players in here and add them, but that's much more difficult than simply doing it from the player pool tab. This is my favorite way to set golfers into a group. And you might be asking, why do you want to set golfers into a group? Well, let's say I take the highest projected owned players and see this little, I call it a little hamburger button. It looks like two buns and a hamburger in the middle of the 3 bars, waffle, hamburger, whatever you want to call it. Click this and I can add them to my test group right from here. So you can see I get a little green check that added Scotty Scheffler to my test group. And I'm going to just add the 5 highest owned golfers to my test group, because let's say I don't want to have all the chalk in one lineup. So I just added the 5 highest owned golfers to my test group. If I go back to the groups tab, you're going to see that my test group has 5 golfers in it. And I can tell it in the middle here, players to use, minimum of 0, maximum of 1 is what it defaults to right now. But I can say, hey, I want to use at least 1 golfer from this group and no more than 2. And so every single lineup that I build with this rule in place is going to have at least one of these golfers, but not more than 2 of them, to help spread out the chalky golfers in my lineup builds. And you can build many different groups. Another way to do it would be a big advantage in golf often tends to be with tee times. So if you have, say there's going to be a weather edge for the guys that are teeing off very early in the morning, 2:52 a.m. Eastern time, in this case with the Open Championship over in Scotland, you can put all these early tee times in a group and say, hey, I want to use 4 of these guys or 5 of these guys and build some lineups to stack tee times based on weather if we determine there's going to be a weather edge. So that's another reason why you might want to utilize groups for golf. So once I have my group set, I am ready to go ahead and build my lineups. I have put, let's build 30 lineups into this setting in the upper right-hand corner. You can change it up and down, or you can just manually type the number, however many lineups you want to build. Again, for this purpose, I'm going to say, let's just do 30 lineups. I have my group set where it is going to include at least 1, but not more than 2 players from this group here. So every lineup will include at least 1 of these guys, but not more than 2 of them. And I did that for purposes of trying to spread out the projected ownership among those players. So the lineups that get spit out once I click build are not specifically going to denote who is from the group and who is not. You just got to trust that it's doing it properly, and you can do some spot checking on it. But it's going to take every input that I've put into the tool so far, and once I click build, it's going to build the number of lineups that I tell it to build. So it did that in about 10 seconds. I didn't get any error messages, which is good. And then it gives me 30 lineups. And you can still sort and edit them from this lineups page after it spits them out. These hearts here, I denoted as players that I want to get specific amounts of exposure to. So Morikawa, I had put at least 50, but not more than 60% ownership. It gave me 57. Xander Schauffele has a lighter colored heart. I had him set for a lower number, 10 to 15%. It gave me 17%. But you'll remember I clicked the toggle button earlier within the build rules to prioritize lineups over max exposures. If I uncheck that, it would give me more, or it would give me less of him to stay within that 10 to 15% range instead of the 17 that I got. But again, 2% different. I'm okay with that. But let's say you don't want 53% Sung J.M. You think that's too much. I can manually set a maximum exposure to him right here. And I can set that to say 40. And then I can just build again. And it'll give me another set of lineups. And you can see Sung J.M. right here in this build, 40%. I can also edit a specific lineup to take him out. So here's Sung J.M. in lineup number 1. I can click this little swap button and I can find another player. If it's red, their salary doesn't work. If it's gray, their salary does work. So I can put Thigala in here, and you can see that Im has changed to Thigala in this specific lineup. I had also set my salary max at 49,800 to try to avoid duplication. And so if I go through these lineups, other than this one that I just manually edited, you'll see that none of them use more than 49,800 in salary. And it is taking into account my min-max exposures and also all my other inputs that I've put in throughout the process. So again, you decide you don't want somebody. Okay, if I want to set a max exposure on Corey Connors at 10%, suddenly I don't like him for whatever reason. Again, I can change the min-max in here, and you can see with this build, I'm down to 10% Corey Connors. Super easy to manipulate and change your lineups on the fly, even after you've already built them once. And even if I want to do 100 lineups here, again, this is a high-powered tool that can do this in a very big hurry. So I'll just let it quickly do 100 lineups, and that took maybe 10 seconds. Now I've got 100 lineups here. And again, it fits my max exposure, min-max exposure desires, and my groups that I have set up throughout the process. Once you're done with this, if you are ready to export your lineups, I've still got Corey Connors filtered in here, so I can hit this X button to remove that filter. And I can either save these lineups or I can simply export them to upload to DraftKings. So if I hit save all, see it's going to put those 100 lineups in my saved lineups, and then I can export them and it'll give me a CSV file that I can upload to DraftKings. You can save individual lineups and build again and save additional builds as you go. Everything that you put the heart on here, you can toggle and untoggle within your saved lineups. So that's a good tutorial of our lineup HQ tool here for golf on RotoGrinders. And again, you can get access to all these tools. Super easy to use, especially once you get used to it. You do it 1, 2, 3 weeks, your process gets better utilizing the in-depth tools each and every time. So if you want to get ahead of the competition, you can do that with RotoGrinders Premium. We have an option for whatever you are looking for here at RotoGrinders. You can get a 6-month combo subscription for an exclusive price of $469.99. That's a savings of $250 over buying 6 individual months of combo premium. If you're not a fan of commitment, you can get a month of RG combo premium for just $120. And if you want a test run before you fully dive in, you can get a 3-day pass for $19.99. So that is a little bit about our golf lineup HQ tool here at RotoGrinders. Be sure to check it out. We think you'll really like what we have to offer. If you have specific issues that you want to discuss with me, you can hit me up on Twitter at STLCardinals84. Again, I'm Justin Van Zuden. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll catch you all later.